The humans' enemies rejoiced at the sight of the once mighty UES Retribution, now nothing more than a shattered derelict being hauled off to an Ulian museum. They didn't know about the ship's human passenger or his secret orders, and they were about to find out that even a museum piece can still bite. When Lieutenant Commander Jeremy Bryant received his orders to board the Ulian transport ship and accompany the Retribution to its final resting place, he thought it was a joke. The Retribution was ancient history, a relic from the human-Ulian war centuries ago. Its hull was scorched and pitted, its engines cold and lifeless. The ship belonged in a museum. But as Bryant read further, he realized the joke was on the Ulians. Hidden within the official orders, written in code decipherable only by human eyes, were the true instructions. Bryant was to infiltrate the Retribution, under the guise of overseeing the ship transfer. Once on board, his mission was to bring the warship back to life. With tensions between humanity and the Ulian Empire stretched to the breaking point, Earth needed an ace in the hole. The Retribution would be that ace. As the transport ship latched onto the Retribution's docking clamps with a bone-jarring thud, Bryant couldn't help but stare in awe at the sheer size of the human dreadnought. It dwarfed the Ulian ship, and for a moment, he felt a swell of pride. The Ulians thought they'd defeated this beast. They were wrong. Bryant made his way through the umbilical and onto the Retribution's command deck. In the dim emergency lighting, he could make out a CIC that looked like it had been frozen in time. Remarkably, even after centuries adrift, everything seemed intact. The ship had been preserved by the icy vacuum of space, a slumbering giant waiting for the chance to awaken once more. And humanity needed the Retribution, now more than ever. As the transport began the long haul to the Ulian homeworld, reports started coming in of Ulian ships massing on the borders of human space. The Ulians had already issued their ultimatums: surrender the resource-rich systems along the disputed frontier, or see them taken by force. If it came to war, the human colonies would be outnumbered and outgunned. But not if Bryant succeeded in his mission. Carefully, painstakingly, he began the process of bringing the Retribution systems back online, routing power from the transport ship to avoid detection. It was a race against time, both to stay ahead of any Ulian scans that might reveal the deception, and to reach the Retribution's full combat capacity before the Ulian invasion fleet reached human space. In the end, it was an Ulian engineer who first noticed the anomalous power readings coming from the human ship. By the time the Ulian commander, Kraxon, could assemble a security team to investigate, it was too late. Bryant had managed to seal off the entry hatch, and with one final keystroke, he completed the reactivation sequence. The stunned Ulians could only watch as the Retribution tore free of the docking clamps and swung its guns to bear on the suddenly defenseless transport. Over every comm channel, Bryant broadcast a message that was heard by every ship in range. "This is Lieutenant Commander Jeremy Bryant of the UES Retribution. We're back on the line and ready to defend Earth. For any Ulian vessels hearing this, back off." Light years away, the Ulian invasion fleet descended on the human colony of New Terra, confident that nothing could stop them. But as the Ulian commanders took stock of their assembled ships, a sense of dread began to take hold. The transport was missing. Its precious cargo, a 700-meter-long human battleship, was gone. And if that ship reached the colony in time, it might just be enough to turn the tide of the war before it even began. With the Ulian transport fading into the distance, Jeremy Bryant wasted no time in setting a course for New Terra. The Retribution's engines rumbled to life, the ancient ship shaking off centuries of dormancy as it surged forward through the stars. Jeremy's hands flew over the command console, his eyes scanning the readouts. Shield generators online, weapon systems powering up, propulsion. He frowned. The engines were functional but far from optimal. They'd need some serious work if the Retribution was going to have any chance against the Ulian fleet. "Prioritize repairs on shields, weapons, and engines," Jeremy barked to his makeshift crew, a ragtag mix of human engineers and tech specialists who had volunteered for this seemingly impossible mission. "We need to get this ship battle-ready, and fast." As the crew scrambled to carry out his orders, an alarm blared through the bridge. "Sir, we're picking up a distress call," the comms officer reported. "It's a human cargo ship under attack by Ulian raiders." Jeremy hesitated for only a moment. The Retribution was in no shape for a fight, but he couldn't just leave that ship to its fate. "Set an intercept course," he ordered. "Let's show these raiders what a museum piece can do." The Retribution dropped out of warp, its sudden appearance taking the Ulian raiders completely by surprise. Before they could react, Jeremy targeted their ships with a series of precise EMP bursts, a tactic straight out of the old human Ulian war playbook. The raiders' system sputtered and died, leaving them dead in space. "Cargo ship, this is the UES Retribution," Jeremy broadcast. "You're safe now." There was a long pause, then a stunned voice came over the comm. "Did you say Retribution? But that ship was decommissioned a century ago." Jeremy couldn't help but grin. "Reports of our decommissioning have been greatly exaggerated." News of the Retribution's miraculous return spread like wildfire. On New Terra, the beleaguered human defenders cheered at the prospect of the legendary ship coming to their aid. But in the halls of Ulian power, the mood was far darker. "The Retribution cannot be allowed to reach New Terra," the Ulian Emperor growled. "It would bolster human morale and threaten our entire invasion." He turned to Kraxon, the disgraced commander who had let the Retribution slip through his fingers. "You have one chance to redeem yourself, Kraxon. Destroy that ship or don't bother coming back." As the Retribution raced towards New Terra, Jeremy was wrestling with a more immediate problem. A coded message from human intelligence had revealed the chilling possibility of a Ulian saboteur hidden among his crew. He couldn't risk tipping off the traitor by launching an overt investigation. Instead, Jeremy would have to play a dangerous game, pretending all was normal while secretly working to uncover the spy. But he was running out of time. A Ulian battle group, led by a vengeful Kraxon, had moved to intercept the Retribution. As the enemy ships closed in, Jeremy knew he was facing an impossible choice. If he tried to fight, he risked exposing the Retribution's weakened state and the presence of the saboteur. But if he surrendered, New Terra would fall, and with it, perhaps all of human space. Kraxon's voice crackled over the comm, dripping with menace. "UES Retribution, this is your only warning. Surrender or be destroyed." On the bridge of the Retribution, Jeremy met the eyes of his crew, seeing his own dedication reflected back at him. They had come too far to give up now. He opened a channel to the Ulian flagship, his voice steady and calm. "Kraxon, this is Lieutenant Commander Jeremy Bryant of the UES Retribution. I have a counteroffer for you." A tense silence fell over the bridge as the two fleets faced each other, weapons primed, the future of two civilizations hanging in the balance. Jeremy Bryant's mind raced as he faced down Kraxon's battle group. The Retribution hung in space, a wounded giant surrounded by circling predators. He knew the ship's weaknesses all too well. Systems barely holding together, a saboteur lurking in the shadows. But he couldn't let Kraxon see that vulnerability. "Kraxon!" Jeremy's voice rang out over the comms, steady despite the tension thrumming through his body. "You want a demonstration? I'll give you one. The Retribution may be old, but she's got teeth." Jeremy's fingers flew over the console, rerouting power. "Shields to maximum. Divert all non-essential systems." The crew worked frantically, following his lead. Jeremy positioned the massive warship, angling it just so between the Ulian fleet and a dense field of space debris. "Initiating evasive maneuvers," he called out. The Retribution began to spin, a slow, controlled rotation that sent debris hurtling against its shields. Each impact flared bright against the barrier, mimicking weapons fire with startling accuracy. For a moment, it seemed to be working. The Ulian ships held their positions, wary of the Retribution's apparent firepower, but then alarms blared across the bridge. "Sir, shield harmonics are fluctuating." Jeremy's heart sank as he saw it. Gaps in the shield matrix, exposing the ship's vulnerabilities. Craxon's voice crackled over the comms, triumphant. All ships, attack pattern Delta. Take that relic out of commission. The Ullian battle group surged forward, weapons locked on the Retribution's weak points. Jeremy gripped his chair, mind racing. With the maneuvering thrusters offline, they were a sitting duck. Redirect all power to forward shields, he shouted. Full speed ahead. The ancient engines roared to life, driving the Retribution straight at the oncoming Ullian ships. Jeremy watched Craxon's flagship grow larger on the screen. A game of chicken played out among the stars. At the last possible second, Craxon's ship veered away, the rest of his fleet scattering in its wake. The Retribution barreled through the space they'd occupied moments before, buying precious seconds of reprieve. But the cost was catastrophic. Alarms wailed as systems across the ship failed, life support flickering out deck by deck. Jeremy's crew abandoned their stations, racing to seal off critical areas. In the chaos, Jeremy broadcast one final message, his voice raw with persistence. To all who can hear me, the Retribution lives. Humanity will not go quietly into the night. We are awakening, rising to meet this threat. The Ullians thought us beaten, but they've only stirred a sleeping giant. More ships will come. We will fight. We will endure. As the message faded into static, Jeremy had no way of knowing the impact of his words. Across the sector, human forces rallied. On New Terra, a fleet assembled, not the ragtag defense Craxon expected, but a formidable armada of recommissioned warships, awakened from their long slumber. The Ullian invasion force dropped out of warp, ready to crush the human resistance. Instead, they found themselves facing a wall of battle-ready ships, centered around the battered but unbroken Retribution. Humanity had risen, and the real fight was about to begin. The Ullian invasion force dropped out of warp, ready to crush the human resistance. Instead, they found themselves facing a wall of battle-ready ships, centered around the battered but unbroken Retribution. Humanity had risen, and the real fight was about to begin. Jeremy Bryant's eyes widened as he watched the sensor readings on the Retribution's main view screen. Dozens of ships were decloaking around them, their IFF signatures lighting up like a Christmas tree. Sir, we're receiving hails from the UES Indomitable, the Dauntless, and the Resolute, the comms officer reported, his voice filled with disbelief. Jeremy let out a low whistle. Those ships were legends, thought to be long gone. Yet here they were, restored and ready for battle. His call to arms had awakened more than just the spirit of humanity. It had reawakened its sleeping giants. The Retribution systems continued to flicker and spark around them, but Jeremy guided the ancient warship to the vanguard position. He opened a channel to the fleet. This is Lieutenant Commander Bryant of the Retribution. We stand ready to face the Ullian threat. Let's show them what humanity is made of. On the Ullian flagship, Craxon snarled in frustration. This was supposed to be an easy victory, a chance to crush the troublesome Retribution once and for all. Instead, his reinforced battle group now found itself vastly outgunned. Impossible, he hissed. How did they amass such a force without our knowledge? A subordinate officer approached, his posture tense. Sir, long-range sensors are picking up additional contacts. A portion of our main invasion force is breaking off towards New Terra. Craxon's eyes darted between the tactical display and the imposing wall of human ships before him. The Retribution hung at the center of the formation, its battle-scarred hull a silent challenge. He knew he should retreat, but the thought of letting that infernal ship slip through his grasp again made his blood boil. Prepare to attack, Craxon ordered, his voice filled with fanatical commitment. We'll destroy the Retribution if it's the last thing we do. But before he could give the order to fire, his tactical officer cried out in alarm. Sir, the human fleet is moving to surround us. We're about to be cut off. Reality finally sank in. Craxon realized that if he didn't act now, his entire battle group would be trapped and destroyed. With a howl of frustration, he gave the order to retreat. As the Ulian ships turned tail and fled, a cheer went up across the human fleet. On the bridge of the Retribution, Jeremy allowed himself a small smile of victory, but the battered state of his ship quickly sobered him. A new voice crackled over the comms. "Retribution, this is Admiral Chen of the UES Indomitable. Hell of a fight you put up there, son. We're dispatching repair crews to get you back in fighting shape." Jeremy hesitated. The Retribution was more than just a ship to him now. It was a symbol, a rallying cry for humanity, but he knew that his pride couldn't stand in the way of what was best for the war effort. "Thank you, Admiral," Jeremy replied. "We'll gladly accept the assistance." As he prepared to transfer command and board the Indomitable, Jeremy took one last look around the Retribution's bridge. Despite the sparking consoles and flickering lights, the old ship had proven itself a true warrior. Its legend would only grow from here. Light years away, Craxton stood before the Ulian Emperor, his head bowed in shame as he delivered his report. The Emperor's face grew darker with each word. "Reactivated human warships, a united defense fleet," the Emperor snarled. "And at the center of it all, this Retribution?" Craxton nodded grimly. "Yes, my lord. It seems we have severely underestimated the humans' drive. This war, it may not be the simple conquest we anticipated." The Emperor's eyes narrowed, the full weight of the situation sinking in. For the first time in generations, the Ulian Empire faced a true threat to its dominance. The humans, long dismissed as primitive and weak, had awakened. And at their head stood a mighty warship called Retribution, its very name a promise of the conflict to come. The UES Indomitable glided through the void, its hull scarred from recent battles. On the bridge, Jeremy Bryant stood before a holographic display, studying the layout of the Ulian research facility. His fingers traced the path of the planned assault, muscle memory from countless simulations. "Final checks complete, sir," reported Lieutenant Chen. "All systems green." Jeremy nodded, his eyes never leaving the display. "Commence operation." The Indomitable's engines flared to life, propelling the massive warship across the border into Ulian space. Flanking it, the newly repaired Retribution kept pace, its ancient systems humming with renewed strength. As they approached the target system, alarms blared. "Ulian patrol vessels detected!" shouted the tactical officer. Jeremy's voice rang out, calm and steady. "Weapons free. Take them out before they can raise the alarm." The human ships unleashed a devastating barrage, catching the Ulian patrols completely off guard. Explosions blossomed in the darkness as the enemy vessels were reduced to drifting debris. With the element of surprise maintained, the fleet pushed onward. Soon, the Ulian research world loomed before them, its surface dotted with defensive emplacements. "Retribution, target those shield generators," Jeremy ordered. "Boarding teams, prepare for deployment." The ancient warship's main cannons roared to life, lancing out with pinpoint accuracy. One by one, the facility's shield generators erupted in balls of fire. As the last generator fell, Jeremy strapped himself into the pilot's seat of a marine dropship. He glanced at the grim-faced soldiers around him, each encased in heavily armored suits. "This is it, people," he said, his voice tight. "Let's end this war." The dropship bay doors opened, and Jeremy gunned the engines. A swarm of human vessels poured from the fleet, streaking towards the facility below. Suddenly, the sky erupted with plasma fire. A wing of Ulian fighters had scrambled to intercept, their weapons tearing through the formation of dropships. Jeremy's hands flew over the controls, weaving through the maelstrom. He watched helplessly as friendly craft exploded around him, Marines crying out in terror as they were engulfed in flames. A massive Ulian warship loomed ahead, its guns training on the vulnerable dropships. Jeremy's mind raced, calculating trajectories and possibilities. He knew what he had to do. "All craft, break left," he shouted into the comm. "I'll clear you a path." Ignoring the protests of his crew, Jeremy pushed his dropship to full throttle. The Ulian fighter filled his view screen, growing larger by the second. Jeremy closed his eyes, memories flashing before him. The day he first saw the Retribution, the faces of his crew, the hope in the eyes of the colonists they'd saved. For humanity, he whispered. The dropship slammed into the Ulian fighter at full speed. Both craft erupted in a massive fireball, but the path was clear. The remaining human dropships streaked past the expanding cloud of debris, racing towards the facility below. On the surface, Marines poured from their landing craft, immediately coming under heavy fire. They fought their way through corridors and chambers, leaving a trail of Ulian bodies in their wake. Finally, they reached the central chamber. A massive device dominated the room, pulsing with ominous energy. "This is it," the lead Marine said. "Plant the charges and let's—" His words were cut off as a blinding light filled the chamber. An immense shockwave tore through the facility, crumpling armored suits and shattering bones. In an instant, the entire assault team was wiped out. Aboard the Indomitable, sensors went haywire as the Vorton wave washed over the fleet. Captain Chen stared at the malfunctioning displays in horror. "What's happening?" he demanded. "Where's the ground team?" Before anyone could respond, a horrifying sight appeared on the main view screen. A massive fissure was spreading across the surface of the Ulian world, spewing molten rock into space. "Dear God," Chen whispered. "They actually did it." The planet's crust buckled and split, tearing the world apart from the inside out. As the devastated halves began to drift away from each other, Chen snapped back to reality. "All ships, emergency jump," he shouted. "Get us out of here now!" The human fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind the shattered remnants of the Ulian homeworld. As they fled, the full weight of what had transpired began to sink in. They had struck a mighty blow against the Ulians, but at what cost? Jeremy Bryant was gone, along with countless other brave souls, and they had witnessed firsthand the terrifying power that both sides now wielded, the ability to render entire worlds uninhabitable in the blink of an eye. As the fleet regrouped at a safe distance, the mood was somber. The Retribution hung in space alongside its modern counterparts, a silent witness to the devastation. The ancient warship had been reborn as a symbol of human defiance, but now it stood as a stark reminder of the crossroads humanity faced. The war had escalated beyond anything they could have imagined. The power to destroy worlds was now a reality, and the path forward was shrouded in uncertainty. As the human commanders gathered to plan their next move, a heavy question weighed on all their minds. How do you win a war when victory means the annihilation of both sides?
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.